The others were taking real strain while we sniggered at them under our breath. After the PT session, which went on for about an hour and a half, the idiot who had tried to wrestle me in the college, Lenny, got quite upset by my slick maneuver of taking the lightest pole. He came over to me like before, and again, I hooked him in the jaw. Square. The guy didn't learn. He came at me again and grabbed me around my waist as before and picked me up and threw me over exactly the same way as before. While I was getting his head in a vice-lock grip, Gideon started to chuckle. He knew what was coming next. The gorilla picked me up off the ground and threw me onto my back. I hung on to his head and assured him that this time I would break his neck. He again swallowed his pride and once more gave in. What an asshole. My platoon was one of the first to complete the crowd control riot course at the Verdrag training camp. All the platoons that had completed the course were sent out to help the experienced riot units on the East Rand. I was only 18 and it was my first day on the riot trip. And I was thrown into the teeth of an angry COSATU, which is Congress of South African Trade Unions, mob at Germiston Railway Station. The COSATU members had been on strike for several weeks from March 1986 over grievances that none of us either understood or cared about. It turned out that they were conducting a living wage campaign, the campaign heavily backed by the African National Congress. There was a security clampdown on all such activities, but this didn't bother COSATU. COSATU was busy organizing and mobilizing union members to take part in the campaign. This added to the number of strikes and stoppages around the country that were already crippling South Africa's economy. The large percentage of strikers, some 18,000 strong, belonged to the South African Transport Services Union. The strike had apparently, and I stress apparently, began as a result of a worker being unfairly dismissed. Despite him having already been reinstated, it was clear that the ANC and COSATU alliance were merely looking for an excuse to commit acts of violence and to end up appearing to be the victims. By then, there had been numerous reports of non-strikers being intimidated and assaulted. At COSATU House, the union's HQ, they were forced to sign forms against their will, making them members of the union. It was, of course, illegal to do this, but the scabs, guys who wouldn't strike, were threatened with murder, rape, necklacing, placing a tire around the person's neck, as I said before, and dousing the person in petrol and setting them alight, and the beating of their families. So, of course, the people submitted. I was part of a group of 14 young recruits, none older than myself, who had formed a line at the top of a flight of stairs that led to the station platform from an underground tunnel. The thunder of political jingles being sung in deep, angry voices of about 300 strikers resonated down the tunnel and up the stairway towards us. I was almost shitting myself. At first, we could not see them, but the sound almost scared the life out of me. Then they appeared at the bottom of the stairs and swung in our direction. It was a terrifying sight. They were armed with knopkieries, whips, knives, and a whole variety of vicious weapons. None of us had ever experienced anything like this before, and we were about to be seriously overwhelmed. I was shocked when we were ordered to storm the mob with our sjamboks. And a sjambok is like a whip, and disperse them. I suddenly realized that men will commit extremely violent acts when their survival is threatened, no matter who you are. Well, I certainly went nuts. I don't recall most of what happened or how long it went on. It was just all a blur. Something snapped inside me that day, and I came out of it a changed person. We clashed with the mob in hand-to-hand fighting. It must have been something like the 100-Year War. I was stabbed in the arm without even knowing it, and there was blood all over me. Nevertheless, the physical damage was minor. I punched and kicked and fought with everything I had. The situation was unreal and confusing, and I couldn't really make out who was who. Fortunately, the crowd began to disperse as we got the better of them. The emotions I felt are hard to describe. I guess I came out of it shocked, but invigorated somehow. I looked around at my friends, and they all looked the same, but were obviously also in shock. Somehow, their young faces didn't look so young anymore. The next day, COSATU held a meeting at the World Trade Center in Germiston, which was about 500 meters down the road from the railway station where the incident had happened. They were clearly unhappy about what had happened the day before and wanted revenge. We formed a line at the exit to the center. This didn't make any sense to me at the time, and it still doesn't. But because the strikers had nowhere else to go except through our line of about 10 men, they were loudly singing Shaya Mabur, Waza, Konto Isizwe, which means strike the Boer, come on, spear of the nation. Konto Isizwe is the military wing of the ANC. There's now a political party in South Africa called that, run by Jacob Zuma. They were after us and they wanted us dead. The insanity I saw in myself that day was so uncontrollable that I realized for sure that when placed in a position where one survivor is threatened, you will act completely out of character. You will kill or maim without a second thought. I found myself in the middle of a full-scale hand-to-hand battle with some really angry workers. I was swinging my sjambok and wildly, with a plastic handle, came off. Again, I went totally blank. I came to my senses standing over a pile of people who were trying to escape the crowding under a stairwell. I was hammering them with the butt of my shotgun. In the ensuing violence, I was whipped across my back and by one of my comrades, and the pain was excruciating. It seemed to possess my whole body. When I realized what I was doing, I felt ashamed that I had turned into this. I seemed to have become some kind of monster. But I had to keep fighting because the protesters were still attacking. Things were out of control and we were being overpowered. I really thought it was the end for us all. A gunshot ripped through the crowd. A man in front of me fell to the ground, his face ripped off by shotgun pellets. I couldn't see where the gunfire was coming from, as everything around me was too confused. A few more gunshots followed, but this only made matters worse. The strikers went into a frenzy and ran straight through the shopping center to the road behind us. They flattened and smashed everything in their path, including the shop windows and the goods inside. Sergeant Schroeder, who told me to follow them and make sure that they didn't return. I ran through the debris of a clothing shop and found myself with Schroeder in a small side road surrounded by angry men who wanted to kill us. I had nowhere to go and was trapped. I felt fear like I'd never felt fear before. I was terrified. Rocks came pelting down on the two of us, and Schroeder shouted to me to use my shotgun. Then a petrol bomb hit the ground in front of my left boot. A large flame sprayed over the bottom of my bush pants. They caught fire, and I needed a new pair of pants, not just because of the fire. This was a serious day for me. Anyway, there were about 60 of the angry men in front of me and about 30 at the back. Schroeder shouted, "Shoot with a shotgun, shoot!" I pulled off 4 shots in the ground in front of the group facing me. I was using AAA shot, and some of it must have ricocheted into the crowd. They turned as one and ran, with me after them. One person fell to the ground and lay there. I was shocked at myself. I had actually shot another human being.